Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Teacher Goals live special event with our author, Lana Penley, who has written SEL, Unlocking SEL, and this is the 1 year anniversary. So we wanted to come on and celebrate it. And she has brought a great PD for us today and for leadership and how to truly get SEL going in schools, unlocking its true potential. So can you tell us a little bit about the book and what you're going to be talking about today?
All right. Thank you, Brad, and welcome everyone. And thank you to my publisher, Teacher Goals. I'm glad you're here tonight. Welcome to our webinar, SEL Starts with Us. Yes, it's been 1 year since the book came out. And if you hold on to the end, we have a special gift for you. So hang on. So here's what we're going to do today. We have about 45 minutes, probably even a little bit less. So I want to be super focused on this being valuable for you. So feel free to take screenshots, take some notes, and just do what you need to do to be in this moment. I want to give you some steps that you need to move from unsure about what to do about adult SEL, but maybe you know it's important, but you're not sure how to get going with you. And I want to help you with that. So if you're a principal, an assistant principal, a district or school leader, this is for you. And if you're an exhausted one, this is really and especially for you. So what if the key to transforming your school culture didn't start with another initiative or program, but with adult SEL and with you? So let's get going. So here's the 4 things we're going to go over. An overview, and then we're going to do the 4 C's of adult SEL. And we're going to do then some practical application and make sure it's not just theory. What are some practical things we can do? And then I'm going to invite you to do 2 steps that you can get going on right away. Now, go ahead and write down my email because in case you have any questions or we have any tech issues or anything, I want you to know how to be able to contact me. So just take a moment and screenshot that or write down that email and I can get back to you. So just a little bit about me, just quickly, just to tell you, I spent over 25 years in education as a teacher, a coach, a principal, and now the founder of Unlocking SEL, my company, where I help schools across the country create happier and healthy learning environments, reducing educator burnout, and increasing positive student outcomes. Now, during my more than a decade as a principal, I saw firsthand how much stress the adults are carrying, me included, the pace, the constant pressure to do more. And one moment that really changed everything for me was the day our school experienced a crisis. We had a school fire during the school day. As you can imagine, alarms were blaring, smoke in the halls, hundreds of students looking for us to be calm. I'm excited to say everybody survived and everybody was okay, but I really could feel how deeply my own regulation, how the well-being of the staff really stood up and helped everybody at that moment. Now, following the fire, we turned to social and emotional learning, SEL, but not as another initiative, but as a way to heal as a community. We began with the adults, focusing on connection and mindfulness and emotional awareness. And what started as a response to crisis really grew into an ecosystem of care that changed everything. Referrals went down, suspensions dropped, and happiness across students and staff went up. Now, this experience really showed me the power of SEL and what it can really do, and led me to be inspired and to work with Teacher Goals to create the book, Unlocking SEL. In this book, I share the 5 keys to transforming schools through social and emotional learning. Because when we wanted to do it, I couldn't find a book that really encompasses a blueprint, a roadmap, if you will, about how to implement it, but just really bits and pieces. But I wanted to do it school-wide. So what would that look like? I couldn't find the book. So that's when I thought, well, I'm just going to do the best I can to write it. And so I'm so excited that it's been able to help some educators and some schools really change and transform their school culture to more positive places. So let's take a deep dive into this and give you some things that you can get going on. All right. So here, let's get started on what I call the 4 C's. This is adult SEL. This first C is Clarity. Let's get clear on what adult SEL is. It's essential that we can't lead if we don't understand it. When we really grasp what adult SEL is and why it matters, we will stop treating it as just like another initiative and try to live into it as a leadership practice. Because clarity really can help us kind of see beyond programs and checklists to real goals, which is creating a culture where we all feel a sense of belonging. So, what is adult SEL? It's the process through which educators and leaders develop these key attributes of self awareness, emotional regulation, and relationship skills that we need to thrive both personally and professionally. It's really applying the same principles that we teach students that we need ourselves. It's really inner work, if you will, because we just can't lead it if we don't understand it. And that's why, to me, it has to start with clarity. What is adult SEL? So I had to think of an analogy. I love to use analogies here. And this is one I think is really important to this and explains it. Supporting students without supporting the adults is like tuning up our car's sound system while ignoring the engine. On the surface, everything seems fine. The music is playing, the display lights up, but underneath, the system that powers it all is struggling. In schools, the adults are the engine. Their energy, emotional regulation, and sense of connection drives every part of the student experience. So that's why we really have to invest in SEL, adult SEL. Well, let's look at some data. Let me show you some data here. Before we talk about strategies, what's the reality? Remember, we're talking about clarity here. 90% of educators say burnout is a serious problem. I was showing this the other day and someone says, that's all? I thought it'd be higher than that. But that is a huge number. And then let's talk about leaders. This webinar is really focused on school leaders. Let me show you this statistic. 50% of new principals quit by their third year in a role. Does that surprise us? We know how hard this job is and the impact of turnover. But it's not just a human toll. There's also a financial one. Is it costs roughly $75,000 every time we have to hire, train, and onboard a new principal. So the real cost isn't just dollars, as we've said, it's disruptive school culture, inconsistent leadership, and the emotional ripple effect that reaches every classroom. So I kind of think of it like that. When we support the adults, we stabilize the system. So let's move on to our second C, and that is community. So when we're really thinking about this community, it's how do we turn a group of educators into a team? How do we transform a building of classrooms into a place of belonging? Belonging is having a key moment right now in education. We know it's important for students, but it's not just for students, it's key for humans, so the adults too. Probably many of us that have been in education have been in buildings where we did not feel that sense of belonging. And hopefully now we're in buildings where we do feel a sense of belonging and we know the difference in the two. When we feel a sense of belonging, we collaborate more, we trust more, we laugh more, we reach out more. We know we're not alone. So before we can really ask teachers to build relationships with students, we have to make sure the adults themselves feel a part of a community. So just keep that in mind. And I want to just move to this analogy that really will hit this point. I was in South Carolina not that long ago, saw a lot of alligators down there, and really thought about this analogy, okay? We are mammals, and we are meant and wired for connection. A reptile, an alligator, is built for independence, regulates its own temperature, it hunts alone, it reacts to aggression or threat on its own. There's no team, there's no trust circle, just instinct and survival. Reptiles don't need belonging. But mammals, meerkats is the example I use. I've seen these too out in the wild. And it's just amazing. They thrive in community. They live in groups. They take turns caring for each other, watching for danger, and even groom one another to maintain bonds. Now, I'm not saying we need to groom each other, but we do want to be in community. And schools are the same way. When we feel connected, attuned, and responsive, the whole system stays more balanced and safe. But if we slip into reptile mode, we operate in isolation, we react to stress, and we don't co regulate with our community. So let's move on to our third C here, and that is commitment. Now, we've all had initiative overload, right? We just have something come and then it moves on to the next thing, or we have a one and done professional development. As leaders, we can't talk about adult SEL at the start of the year and then just move on to the next thing. It only takes root when we model consistency, when we keep coming back to it, keep touching into it, keep building on it, even when things get busy and even when the pressure is on. Our staff watch what we prioritize. And if we treat it as a side project, they will too. But if we treat it as how we lead, how we meet, how we respond, how we support, it can become part of the culture. And I just love this idea of thinking that culture doesn't shift in a day, it shifts in the daily. It takes a while to really build that change. It's kind of like a campfire. You know, when you start a campfire, you build this campfire, right? But sometimes they go out if we don't tend to it through this small, steady actions. Adding a log here, shifting the coals there, giving a little air. The small practices really matter. And our job as leaders is to not just start the fire, but to protect it. See what I did there? The irony, coming back to the idea of a fire, but thinking it as a campfire and something that we need. So let's go on to our fourth and final C we're going to talk about today before we get into action. And that is centering. That is this idea, which I mentioned at the beginning, is that leadership starts within. As principals, we're pulled in 100 different directions, solving problems, supporting staff, responding to parents. But if we never pause to check in with ourselves, we are leading from reaction, from depletion, instead of intention and gratitude. We want to turn inward. And somewhere along the way, many of us have forgotten about our own well-being and how it sets the tone. Does that relate to anybody out there? I know for myself, that was absolutely true at the beginning of my career, and certainly as the beginning of my career as a principal. I didn't have any time for myself, and I didn't realize I was running on empty. It was sort of like I was like a donut. That's how I like to think of it, with kind of a hole in the middle and just giving all of my care and all of my energy away. But the truth is, I think of it like this. Self-care is in the center, not kind of in a spa day sense, though those are important, but in a regulation and happiness and joyful state, balanced, staying grounded and calm and clear. And then that next ring, when we have more to give, and that's where we care for others, we care for students, we care for parents, the building, the staff. And then we hope that we are wrapped in some systemic care. Now, we have a long way to go in education, but we can't wait. We can't just wait for systemic care before we start caring for ourselves. We can't delay our wellness. Here's this analogy for when it comes to that. And I've been thinking a lot about this idea because I know one of the obstacles to adult well-being is that we don't think we should have to provide all of this on our own. And I agree with that. But we cannot wait for someone else to save us until we retire, until we change jobs. We have to begin to care for ourselves better. And if you're already doing that, you're in a small group of principals of the ones I know, but good for you and keep it going. And if you're not, perhaps this could serve as a wake-up call to really help you. because not caring for ourselves is kind of like standing in the middle of a rainstorm, right? We're getting drenched. We're overwhelmed by chaos and the urgency of school life. And we hold an umbrella and never open it. We're holding the tool that can protect us. Truth is, the storm is not going to stop, but we can choose to stop standing in it unprotected. Open your umbrella. Do what you can, even if the steps are small. So, those, my friends, are the 4 C's. Now, let me ask you a question, and hopefully, our chat is working over here. Of these 4 C's, which one do you think you are best at? That you're like, this is my strength. I'm good at this one. This is the one I'm already doing. Let me just hear from some of you in the chat. And then also begin to think, what is the one that you might be struggling with? What is one that you think, this is where I have some work to do? And if you're like a lot of principals, it could be centering ourselves in this work. All right, friends. So I've gone over these 4 C's here. And let's move to this practical application now. So here's what I want you to do. I have created the 4 C's of an adult SEL action guide. Now, hopefully the QR code works and it will take you to a site where you download your email and it will send this to you. And I'm also going to put this in the chat and hopefully we can get that out to you, this link. All right. I'm going to give you just a moment to go to that link, put your email in there, and then you will get this 4 C's of Adult SEL Action Guide. I'm excited to say this is new copy that I've been working on for a while now, that I'm very excited about, that gives some really specific guidance on how to implement SEL. So how do we move from theory to application? Remember, right now we're talking about the application. All right, and go ahead and take a screenshot of that also. And just another minute here, I'll give you to hopefully get that. Okay, and if for some reason that did not work, hopefully that link is working. You could reach out to me by email and I will send that your way. So what we're talking about and this action guide, the adult SEL action guide, is I take each of these 4 C's and give you a resource where I give you simple, doable actions that you can start doing right away. For example, under clarity, I give you some suggestions before making a decision. Pause and ask, what is the impact on the adults? Or also understanding stress, learn how chronic stress impacts educators. So as you see, I'll give you examples for each one of these. Under connection, I talk about noticing and naming, public acknowledge acts of care and collaboration and courage. And then also team building, providing options for fun, both inside and outside of work hours. And then if we're talking about the next 2 C's, then we get into commitment. How do we sustain what we're already doing? And once we've started, how do we keep going at it? And I give you some suggestions, such as beginning every meeting with a brief check-in or a mindful moment. And then perhaps pairing up, finding a wellness partner on your team to check in with weekly on stress or energy. And then, of course, the most important one, the centering of ourselves. How do we be reminded that leadership starts within? So I'll give some suggestions such as micro pauses, taking 60 seconds between transitions. And maybe you have a wellness non-negotiable, protected daily habit that restores you from walking or journaling or morning quiet, and treat that as sacred. You can use this guide, this adult SEL action guide, to really turn reflection into real action. Not just another initiative, but a framework that you can weave into what you're already doing. This personal reflection tool. Or you could use it as a staff conversation starter. But whatever you do, just make a copy of that. It'll bring you up to a Google Doc where you make a copy, and then you can go in and add it and tweak it and make it fit you better. Remember, our goal isn't perfection, but awareness and consistency, that over time, these actions can build up. So let's move to this final step here, and that is action planning. I like to move to action, even if it's imperfect action. How do we get going on that? And so, two ways I like to think about this. What is the next step that you can do? And then what is your second next step? So really this whole thing that comes down to, how do we do this in small bites just to get the forward momentum going? So I'll give you just a moment to think through, and hopefully you're able to access that guide, and you can say, this would be my first next step, and then this would be my second next step. All right, friends. So here we go. I promised you a little surprise here. And here it is. The book, we have made it free on Kindle right now for limited time on Amazon. So if you go into Amazon right now and you put in Unlocking SEL, you will see it'll pull up for a free Kindle. And the book really dives way deeper into what we've explored in this short 30 minutes together with 5 different keys, one of which is this adult SEL piece. And I go into it in much more detail. Now, the only thing we ask in return is to please take a moment and do a review. The reviews really help us. So if you wouldn't mind, download that book. Send it out, send the link out to other folks that you know, and then leave us a review. And I hope the book can really help you. Okay, so I want to close with this little simple image here. Imagine I ask you to hold a glass of water. Easy, right? You might have heard this before, but it just stays with me. Now, what if I said, you have to hold this for an hour? Then what would happen? Your arm might start to ache. And then what if I said, you have to hold it all day? Now your arm is shaking and you're in pain. And after some time, what's going to happen? You're going to drop the glass. You see, the weight of the glass doesn't change, but the longer you hold it, the heavier it feels. This glass represents the work we carry, the constant responsibilities, the decisions, and the emotions of school leadership. If you don't put it down, it will become unbearable. So adult SEL reminds us to put the glass down, not abandon the work, but to rest, to breathe, to restore, to bring back space for joy in our life. We can pick it back up tomorrow, because we can't pour into our staff, our students, and our school if our own glass is empty. So friends, Thank you so much for being here tonight and for the incredible work you do every day. I hope I've given you some practical tools and, most importantly, reminded you of the importance of caring for yourself. Now, if you're interested in going deeper, I have some exciting things coming up, including workshops and keynotes and opportunities to work directly with schools that are implementing SEL. So you can learn more. You can reach out to me by email, or you can book a meeting at callwithlana.com. So thank you again for coming tonight, for being here. And thank you again to Brad and Teach Your Goals for supporting me in this work. All right. Bye, everyone.